Hey guys, Tiago here with Classical Technology. Thank you for joining me for another video. Today, we're going to take a look at a 4K monitor and an ultra-wide monitor and try to figure out which one is best overall for gaming, for content creation, everyday use. I got these two bad boys behind me here. We're going to take a look, and we may even throw in a third monitor as a surprise just to throw everything off. So let's see what we can do. Let's get ready and let's see what happens. We'll break it down into three categories: content creation, gaming, and everyday use. I've used it for all three. I have a pretty good idea of what I like and what I think is good after a long time of use. So the first thing we're going to touch on is content creation. Now, by content creation, I mean Adobe Premiere, any type of movie, film editing, photo editing, maybe you're trying to make games, anything that you're trying to be productive with the computer. If it's a hobby or your profession, doesn't matter. So let's start with the 4K monitor. So doing a lot of content creation, most of it nowadays is in 4K. And of course for photos, you always want the best resolution possible so you can catch every detail. It does have HDR, which does give you a lot better colors, even though I think those generally are better suited for gaming and things of that nature, as they do have other professional monitors that are more color graded and meant for that type of application. But for the amateur content creator, let's say, or just the enthusiast, the 4K monitor is very good. If you're doing a 4K video, you're going to be able to see what you put out a lot easier. Of course, being a 4K monitor, you do need a beefy graphics card to be able to run it, the processor. This is going to come in more in the game side, and you could always turn down a couple of settings if you're using Adobe Premiere or something like that. But in general, it works very nicely. These are both IPS monitors, so you're going to get a really nice color spectrum there. They're not TN, where it's a little bit more washed out. For the 4K monitor, everything's right in front of you. It's a little bit smaller package, and it is nice with content creation. Like I said, you get that 4K feedback right away because that's the resolution of the monitor. But I will say that this round, definitely the Alienware 34-inch really wins it. It's a little bit close, but I don't think it's particularly that close where it'd be hard to make a decision, and I'll tell you why. If you're editing a film or a movie in Adobe Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, whatever you may use, the widescreen monitor is just amazing. You can put your whole timeline there. You can really stretch things out. You can fit a lot of stuff there. So because of the sheer size of the Alienware 34-inch ultra-wide, it has to win the content creation category. Of course, the 4K looks a little bit crispier, because the resolution is better. This monitor is a beautiful, beautiful monitor, HDR, really beautiful colors. But the size of the Alienware it just flat out wins. You can see your whole project in front of you. You can even separate it into different sections on the monitor. So there's really no substitution for that sort of screen real estate. So if your main purpose is content creation, definitely go for the ultra wide. And the next category we're going to talk about is gaming. And that's where it gets really, really tricky because both of these monitors have tremendous advantages in both categories. So let's start with the 4K. For gaming, it is simply beautiful. The HDR is fantastic. You're playing a game like Battlefield 5, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, even a game like Quake Champions, which is a fast first-person shooter game, an FPS game. Generally, you would think you want to play that on a 240 hertz monitor, which of course, yes, that's the best way to do it, as we're going to talk about a little bit later in the video. But in this case, it actually works really well, and you get these crispy graphics, beautiful resolution. The only caveat here is you're going to need a very powerful graphics card to be able to drive these type of FPS and graphics, especially if you want to play on ultra and even on high. A 2070 is going to start to struggle a little bit with the type of graphics that you need at high refresh rates. 2080, that's where it starts to get better. Likewise, an older 1080 Ti or an older Titan XB, those will still be able to get you respectable performance. Definitely the big daddy of this type of performance is going to be the 2080 Ti. On my 4K monitor, I have a 2080 Ti connected, and I think it's really the perfect graphics card because you're going to get the best performance possible. Aside from getting like a Titan RTX or something like that, which is just a very expensive graphics card, the 2080 Ti really is ideal for 4K gaming. With this type of monitor, 144 Hz, you want to be able to get as high as possible so everything looks smooth. Even though it has G-Sync, you still want to push the envelope as much as possible. So that's basically the downside. You need a very expensive graphics card in order to be able to make this to work well. Otherwise, visually it's stunning. Everything looks really good. HDR works well in a lot of games, you know, like Far Cry 5, Battlefield 5 looks amazing. So overall, after you've played on a 4K monitor, it's hard to go back visually, even to a ultra-wide monitor like the Alienware that looks great. After you've seen a 4K monitor in HDR, it's hard to go back and look at those other monitors as the same. They're still excellent and very good. The 4K with the 2080 Ti, it just looks unbelievably good. And now let's talk about the Alienware Ultrawide for gaming. The number one positive is that you have a really big screen once again, just like with content creation. You can see, you know, the whole map, the battlefield a lot better. Like if you're playing Battlefield 5 or something like that, you get a much better field of view. You feel more immersed. It's not quite VR, and it's not big enough of a monitor to even mimic VR, but you get a little more immersed than the smaller 4K monitor, which is a 27-inch monitor. The 34-inch being widescreen, you know, it does look really, really nice in terms of your field of view. Now, graphically, it doesn't look quite as good as the 4K, because the 4K has HDR, you know, unless you get one of the new ultra wides that do have HDR, but those can be a little bit expensive, you know, prohibitively expensive at times, until the price goes down a little bit and technology moves on. But definitely your number one benefit to using an ultra wide is just you have more screen real estate, and the screen still looks gorgeous, looks really beautiful. It doesn't quite get you the same graphical fidelity as you would on a 4K monitor, and for that reason, on this category, I have to give the slight edge to the 4K monitor. The ultra-wide monitor won the content creation category just because of the sheer size of the screen. You can really work considerably better with your timeline and whatever you're doing editing movies. But in terms of gaming, while it gets very close to the 4K, I personally prefer the graphical fidelity of the 4K monitor with that HDR, and it just, to me, it just really screams out eye candy, and you can really push your graphics card more. For that reason, I think I really like the 4K monitor. In terms of price, both of these monitors are pretty close. They're both under $1,000. You can catch them in different sales. For the last category, that's basically everyday use. This is a little bit of a toss-up. Let me tell you why. The ultra-wide is great for productivity. Once again, when you're doing web browsing, you can put one side of a page on one side of the monitor, the other side somewhere else. You can really get a lot of text on there, you know, a lot of information. My only problem is a lot of times it's so wide that you feel like you have to sort of hunt and you have to really look around, you know. It's very, very wide. Sometimes if you're just trying to read a web page, you have to really scroll around. So for this case, I kind of prefer the 4K monitor, which is a 27-inch monitor sometimes, just if I'm gonna sit in front of it to maybe read a website, be it the news or tech news or anything like that. I just feel like the information is presented to me at a little bit better. Now, if you're gonna watch movies or something like that for fun, the 4K is nice, but then the ultra-wide wins because you have a lot more screen real estate. And it comes down to your preference and maybe a little bit of the first two categories and which one you preferred. Now, the final conclusion, if I had to choose one and only one, I would probably stay with the 4K monitor just because I like pushing the envelope with the 4K HDR, you know, having the best graphics, you know, I just kind of like that. But I think for a lot of people, they'd be happy with the ultra-wide because you still get a great gaming performance. It's great for content creation. For productivity, you can really put a lot on the monitor. So this is a bit of a toss-up. You can really be happy with either monitor. I would personally choose the 4K. It just edges out the ultrawide for me. Also, another thing you have to remember is space on your desk. The ultrawide is pretty big. It has a pretty large footprint. Aside from a 1440p monitor, another monitor that's pretty cool to just mention is a 1080p 240Hz refresh rate monitor. It's really good for first-person shooter games where you have to be really fast. The monitor really responds tremendously well. I wouldn't really recommend this for somebody who's not thinking of being maybe a professional gamer or a very competitive gamer, just because this type of monitor doesn't look that great in everyday use. It's a TN panel, so the colors are a little bit more washed out. It looks nothing like the 4K or the ultrawide monitor in terms of eye candy, but it performs really well at the one thing it does best: high refresh rate gaming. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions. Hopefully this made your decision easier, and I'll see you guys on the next video.